Another football weekend. Wow. In the Premier League, week 10 was basically the big boys flexing, I would say. A lot of the teams that are expected to win most going into most weekends did win. I think Man United, I wouldn't put them in that group yet, even though they won 3 games in a row leading up to the draw they had this weekend. Newcastle is one other team that would have been expected to win that maybe didn't win their game, but I'm happy for West Ham to have gotten a win. They're going through it at the moment, West Ham. And yeah, it was just the big boys flexing things back to normal order. Chelsea going away and winning away at Tottenham Hotspur. City winning against a good Bournemouth outfit. Looked comfortable at the end, but going into that game, I didn't expect it to be as easy as it turned out for them. I mean, they played well. There were some things that were interesting about that game, and then the Liverpool game. Aston Villa did a lot to contribute to that defeat as well. I think some of the on the ball build up play was just questionable, and especially that first goal given to Mo Salah. And one guy who doesn't need any favors, to take chances is Mo Salah. And Emi Martinez, yeah, he's probably still kicking his butt for that mistake. That was terrible. And we're seeing a lot of that again. Teams trying to play out from the back and getting trapped. Spurs did the same in the Chelsea game, and they got themselves again behind, and that was the goal that decided the game. So, where do we start? I think I'm going to start with the Arsenal game because that's the game that I was looking at the most. I did look at some of the other ones, but for sure that one because that's my team. And we saw in this game, at least what I've been kind of looking at, because I do watch broadly the Premier League, and what I'm starting to see is obviously I consume a lot more Arsenal media because I'm always fascinated to see and hear what people are saying about Arsenal. And what I'm hearing a lot when people talk about Arsenal is that like boring football, too efficient or too effective, park the bus, or too many side passes and control, control, control. But what I'm not hearing in these comments is the addition of this seems to be a league wide phenomenon where teams are, the good teams especially, they're facing a lot of low blocks or mid to low blocks. So they struggle to penetrate. And and this was the game. Arsenal, the first half, I think they had like 61% for possession. And then it flipped in the second half to Bournemouth 55% possession, Arsenal 46% possession. The fact that there was that flip tells a bit of a story of what I'm seeing when I watch Arsenal games. So in the first half, the game is nil-nil until 13th minute, and Arsenal continue to play to try and maybe put the game to rest. They get 2-0 up from a counter attack because Bournemouth were not coming out until Arsenal scored that set piece goal. So teams are doing this against Arsenal. They come in, not look to play, concede a set piece goal that everybody's going to say, oh, but Arsenal only scores from set pieces. But what else can you do? I'm watching Man United struggle to break down a lower block or a team that doesn't come out. I'm watching Liverpool struggle with some of the same things when it comes to breaking teams that are fit, strong in the first 10 games of the season. Many of them haven't had many injuries, and they're very motivated. They're all very athletic in the Premier League at the moment. Every team can run with every team. It's about who can last the 90 and repeat for the next 90 and repeat for the next 90 and repeat for the next 90. But we're still in the first 10 games of the season, just hit 10 games this last weekend. And so a lot of teams are very strong defensively, and there's not a lot of things that separate teams in terms of athletic ability and sports science and nutrition and all of that. And so when teams come out not to play, like Bournemouth did, for example, and they've been stubborn. Liverpool won by a late penalty, which was very fortunate because Hannibal Melbury, the kid who used to play for Man United, his first name is Hannibal. Can't say his last name properly. Apologies for that. But he gave Liverpool a handball that he didn't need to give a handball, and that was a penalty. And Salah scored, game over. 1-0 loss to Bournemouth. So they can defend at home. But then what happens is they try to kind of come back in the game. We hit them on the counter. Now the game flips in the second half. Arsenal decides, okay, your turn. You break us down. And Arsenal's defense is impenetrable and haven't conceded a goal since almost 800 minutes now or something like that in the Premier League ago, when they conceded at Liverpool, at Newcastle in September, like late September. So this is going to be happening a lot because Arsenal is playing again tomorrow, and then they're playing again at the weekend. And so if the teams that are playing at the top of the Premier League are going to be, they basically need to find a way to break games open, because then you have to come out, which is probably what happened. Bournemouth can play football, don't get me wrong, but like City, were playing on the counter attack themselves in that game. Bournemouth had more possession than City, especially like, and this is not game state driven. It was like that, like for most of the game. City scored a couple of counter attacking goals with Haaland. If you watch those goals, Haaland is running into a lot of real estate ahead of him. And yes, the French kid gets 2 assists, but like a lot of those are like just one-on-one goals. Like Haaland is running from for very, very deep and does what Haaland does. And he could have gotten a hat trick in that first half. And then O'Reilly scores a goal in the 60th minute. But Burnley, I think they have themselves to blame, to be honest, for sometimes the way they don't do what I think Arsenal gets blamed for. You know, like Arsenal picks their spot. They press. They're very good at pressing when they lose the ball, but they pick and choose when they're going to be aggressive and when they're going to go let you have the ball and get themselves like set up defensively and create a bit of a block themselves, only to then break away and do what they need to do on the counter attack. I would like to see more counter-attack goals from Arsenal, like the one we did with Rice, because that was a really good goal, like really good break, very fast. Gyökeres goal, I mean, cross field pass. I don't know if it was meant for Eze or Trossard, but it was well placed. You know, he had 2 targets to hit. He kind of missed both, but at least the ball was not hit too hard that it went all the way out of play. Trossard was able to run and catch it, and then cross with his left foot. Another player who is very, very, very moments driven in the Arsenal team. Like I think Eze is another one like that. They have these big moments in games, but they're not going to be on your screen moment after moment after moment. They're not high touch players, Eze and Trossard. And I think a lot of times they get Trossard, especially Eze still at the moment is getting a lot of grace from fans, and rightfully, because I think we should support players. But Trossard is not a guy who gets much grace. But what he does is affect games, and he's a clever player in the way he plays on the wing. He never stays on the wing. He will come in and play within the width of the penalty box a lot. But then he can go outside because he has a left foot, and then he can come in and like play a few bounce passes with the midfield and then break open. And then sometimes him and Calafiori will change. Like when he's inside, Calafiori tends to be then on the outside and vice versa. So Trossard is, I understand and accept the reason he's in this team and getting a lot of minutes from the start, even when Martinelli was fit. Because if you're going to be facing a lot of low block, mid block kind of situations, he's a much more collaborative player, and you need a lot more collaborative players on the pitch. And with Eze being a low touch number 10, you kind of need another player who can maybe play make a little bit, and Trossard can. And so that Saka is a playmaker too, of course. But the Eze bit that I wanted to talk about is basically the way I'm kind of learning about Eze in these first 10 or so games. I know he hasn't played all 10 from the start, but he's played enough minutes in those 10 games in the Premier League. And even though he wasn't, very, he would if he was on the bench at the Liverpool game and bench for City, he was just arriving and whatnot. But he has enough now between the Premier League and the Champions League and the couple of Carabao Cup games where he's started both, where I'm like, okay, my guy is definitely, even in the game in the midweek, he had less touches than a lot of the other guys in midfield. And I know he played on the wing in that game, or like, on the left. But even when he plays in the 10, Eze doesn't touch the ball a lot. And he's more of a moments player than the player that I think a lot of Arsenal fans thought he would be when they were calling for him to replace Odegaard in midfield. Odegaard does totally different things to Eze. Odegaard is really the orchestrator and kind of gets things going. I think Eze is more like Trossard and like finishes things. I think he's a better player than Trossard at Arsenal right now, but I think they kind of have a similar impact on games. Like Eze will finish the moves. Eze will create the tool. Like he's not a player who's not creative, but Odegaard is more of a high touch, high volume player. He's going to be dominating the midfield. Like Odegaard you can't miss him in a game. You can miss Eze in a game and not see him he can ghost. Like for example, in this game, he was not a central figure and he was playing like in the number 10 role. But I do think he is a player that, you know, I'm happy we have him. I'm happy we have Eze. I'm not gonna pit him against Odegaard. And I don't like it when fans do that, so I'm not gonna do that. But I do think I've seen enough tape on him now to know that like there's enough room in this Arsenal team for both of them to play at the same time. He doesn't need to be an Odegaard replacement. And I think, in fact, he will be well suited to play on the left when Odegaard is fit if we're going to go 4-2-3-1. But I also think he can play with Odegaard in midfield. And Odegaard can be one of the deeper lying players. Maybe him and Rice can run midfield as they are ahead of them, just to give Zubimendi breaks or something like that. But I don't think Eze needs to be an Odegaard replacement. Not the same profile, not at all. And I think actually they have features or characteristics that complement each other and can and should be used together a lot more when they both fit. So yeah, Arsenal played well, 2-0 in halftime, job done, second gear. For the rest, cruise control and play out the 90 minutes and on to the next one kind of thing. Liverpool was interesting. It's interesting that they decided to basically go with the old boys in this one. It was basically old boys with Ekitike up front for Liverpool. And I think Slot is going to have to do it this way and integrate his like new signings a bit more. Because in this starting 11, he basically, except for Mamardashvili because of the injury to Alisson and Ekitike up front, who probably would not be starting if Isaac was available, even though I think Ekitike has had a better start to life at Liverpool because he was fitter and he's the one signing of the infield players who's had a reasonable start to his life at Liverpool. Scored a goal which was ruled for offside, and unlucky for him. But other than that, like it was the old boys at Liverpool. Robertson at the left back's position, Van Dijk and Konate center backs, Conor Bradley at right back. Then in midfield, it was McAllister with Gravenberch, Gakpo, Soboslai, Salah behind the striker. And that team, he's going to have to go with this team for the next few Premier League games, if I'm being honest. Against City, I think he should start this team. He shouldn't be changing it too much. And then you can go from there. But Aston Villa didn't do themselves any favors. And Emi Martinez was to blame for that first goal. Gifted Mo Salah, like I said earlier, a goal that he didn't need any favors, not favors to do. And Villa were just loose with the ball, man. It was just so infuriating, actually, how bad they were on the ball. And Onana and what's his name, Kamara in midfield, their limitations on the ball were also exposed a few times, I would say. Like it's just not a creative midfield. Aston Villa are missing Yuri Tillemans, who kind of complements Morgan Rogers. I think without Tillemans in that midfield, Rogers is left to do too much. And I don't know how long he's going to be out for, but that's worrisome for Villa, I would say. They're a good team. They'll be fine, but they just didn't have a good day at the office against Liverpool. And I think Liverpool, I mean, they were due one. They lost 4 games straight in the Premier League, and they were home. Good Villa side who just didn't show up well on the day. Pau Torres, also another one who was a bit questionable for some of the big moments for Liverpool. So yeah, Unai Emery will leave Anfield they'll be watching a lot of videotape. This Villa boys. And then the next game I'll talk about very briefly was City flexing against Bournemouth. City are basically trying to do what they can at the moment to be smart in how they manage games. They don't care about the ball as much as they once did. They still care about the ball, but not as much as they once did. And I'm seeing in games Manchester City giving up possession quite a bit. And in the first half, City had most of the ball. Second half, City 44% of the ball against Bournemouth at home. And yes, second half, the game was pretty much done in a way, because once the 60th minute goal by O'Reilly was scored, it was kind of curtains for Bournemouth. And, they don't have much of a bench to call on. And Manchester City basically are doing as well, like what I think Arsenal are doing. You win, you get ahead, and then you try to lock it in. And City are not as strong in the midfield, so like they can't do a track meet with most of these Premier League teams. So they have to find a way to kind of play as deep as they need to when they can, and then break on you, because they have that superhuman guy up front in Erling Haaland. And then basically, yeah, I think for them, their season is Haaland. They will go as far as this kid will take them. They have a very talented team, but none of these other guys are consistent or like have really established themselves. You can even call on Doku. Foden hasn't been consistent for over a year now, since he won Footballer of the Year over a season ago. And then Cherokee, he's still learning his trade in the Premier League. Bernardo Silva, okay, he's a reliable, consistent performer, but he's not going to dominate midfield in Premier League games. So Man City have quite a lot to do as far as like reestablishing themselves as a powerhouse, but they're not as bad a team as many people are trying to claim. I think Man City have just become human, but amongst the humans, they're still good. They were just an inhuman team that was just way too strong for the field. Now the field feels like they have a puncher's chance against City. And so they've just become more humanized, which I think they took a while, maybe understanding that themselves, to be humble enough to give up the ball sometimes. Now they're doing it, and they're getting results consistently. And everybody keeps talking about how, City are done, and Arsenal should have beaten them, and Arsenal should have done this and that, the other to them. But like Manchester City are winning football matches. They're winning football matches. Only Arsenal is more informed than them in the Premier League right now. And next weekend against Liverpool, I wouldn't bet against them. That game is going to be even though Liverpool are the champions and City are the team supposedly that's done. That game will be even. And if they win that game, they're going to be feeling very confident and in feeling themselves. A draw would be nice if you're an Arsenal fan, but that game, at least, but Arsenal has to go to Sunderland and take care of business for that to matter. Whatever these two do, Arsenal needs to just go to Sunderland and win, and worry about the result of that game. In the international break. Chelsea won, Spurs nothing. Like this game, again, we're not going to see a lot of good quality football, guys. And I think Spurs has become basically this is going to sound incredibly arrogant, and maybe it is, but I don't care. They've become basically, for right now, the poor man's Arsenal, in the way that like they're trying to be disciplined, they're trying to make games boring, be efficient with your chances, but they have, I would say, maybe not the same level of talent at the moment. I actually, if I was a Spurs fan, I would care less, but I'm not. But I do think Thomas Frank is doing a good job at Tottenham so far. However, I think he can maybe be a little bit less pragmatic and have a little bit more and maybe the Bergvall injury maybe screws him up a little bit, because I like that kid and I think he can play, very, very, very well in midfield. But I think Tottenham is a very good team under him, and they're going to be a problem for a lot of teams. And I think Bergvall having to leave the game after 7 minutes maybe unsettled them. And this is not because Xavi Simons is then culpable for the goal that Tottenham concede. I think Xavi Simons is a good young player. He messed up big time, and I think people are going too hard on him. But this is what can happen with young players, right? He made a mistake, and I think he will come good because he's talented enough to come good. I would not have paid what they paid for him. Like, I don't think if Arsenal paid that much money for him, I would have thought he was an overpay. I mean, you saw Arsenal fans, though. They thought even on the Matchweek for 48 plus 4 was an overpay. So imagine if we paid what Tottenham paid for Xavi Simons, which I think is in the high 50s, low 60s. It's somewhere in that neighborhood. It's more than Noni, I think, if I remember correctly. And he's a younger player who hasn't done much in the Premier League. So give him time, I think, but I know it's easy to say when that's not your club. But I think this kid is going to be okay. People just need to be patient with players. It's 10 games in. He hasn't played even all 10 games. And he's going to need time. And Chelsea were good on the day. It could have been 3 or 4 for them, and they deserve the win. Xavi Simons era aside, there could have been a few more. João Pedro was a better striker or better finisher. He could have had a few more goals. So, I'm not going to be too hard on this kid and make it about the Xavi Simons. That's not the reason Tottenham lost this game. They lost this game because Chelsea were better. Let's call it what it was. Chelsea were better, and Tottenham needs to figure some things out. And then Man United 2 away. Man United 2 against Forest. That one, I think 2-2 may be a fair result. But Nottingham Forest under Sean Dyche, we don't know who they're going to be yet, because this is probably the best collection of talent Sean Dyche has ever had. So we'll see. He's always wanted to have more talent. We'll see what they will be. they will play it's going to be interesting to see like how they are after 10 or so games under Dyche's tutelage. But in this game, they came from from one down to lead the game. Um, Better XG, but they conceded the ball to United. I think maybe some of that was game state driven because they, they got the lead. United scored first, 34 minutes in, and then Forest went 1-1, 2-1 by the 50th minute, and then it only in the 81st minute did Ahmad score a goal for United to make it 2-2, and then at that point it was a bit helter skelter. But yeah, it was a lot of, I don't know. This game was very typical of Sean Dyche team still for me, like very defense driven. They gave up a lot of the ball. Like first half, ball possession was 44%, Forest, 56% United. In the second half, it went even further down, 39%. They had better XG, to be fair to them, Nottingham Forest, but yeah, this game was not a very good one for either team. I think both teams needed a win. And elsewhere in the Premier League, West Ham United found themselves making a comeback to win a game 3-1 against Newcastle. I didn't watch this game too closely. I am happy for Nuno. I'm happy that he's trying, because I think he's had a raw deal at Tottenham and at Nottingham Forest, if I'm being honest. I think at Wolves he stayed long enough and it was fair to part ways when they did. But he's a decent manager, this guy. And he knows how to get teams playing and working together. And he seems to also be liked by players a lot of the time when he works with teams. So hopefully this is the start of something for them. Like, start of their fight to stay in the Premier League, because the newly promoted sides are not going to make it easy for these established Premier League teams. They're not. And elsewhere, Wolves, that's another one of these Premier League teams that's at risk of relegation. They lost 3-1 to Fulham. I'm sorry, 3-0 to Fulham. And Fulham, I think Fulham will be fine. Like, they have too much talent. They have a very good coach. 3-0 win against Wolves will help them, as far as like standings in the Premier League. But like, I'm not worried about Fulham. I don't think Fulham should be worried about Fulham. I think the Premier League table at this early stage of the season is a bit tricky. And yes, if they didn't win Fulham this game, they're 4 points or so outside of the relegation zone. So it's not a lot of cushion just yet, but I think there's a lot of really good teams here that are going to be scrapping. This league is going to be more congested, from top to bottom. I think this is going to be, I'd be surprised if somebody makes it to 90 points this season because of how good the field is. I know Arsenal are looking good right now, but I don't think, I'd be very surprised if a team breaks 90 points this season. I think there's going to be a lot of results that are going to, just shift for one team to the next, like Sunderland, where, they're still in the top 4 if they win their next game. I think they play today. Where are they? Black Cats. Yeah, there they are. If they win, then this game, the 10th game, they're going to have 20 points. That puts them above Manchester City if they win their next game. So, like, it's a very, very weird Premier League table at the moment. It's hard to call it. I do think some of the teams that are playing once a week are going to go through a period of games between now and January, and when the FA Cup comes, where it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them too, because now they're going to have to start playing every couple of days. So that's going to stretch teams. And with the level of athleticism and the level of preparation teams coming in with in the Premier League, like, it's going to be really hard. So I do think a lot of the Premier League teams that are playing once a week have an advantage over the first 10 games. And you can rest players, you can do a lot of rehabilitation and run hard in games, which is why we're not seeing good football. Like, by good football, I mean we're not seeing games that are broken open, and we're seeing games that are very tight, very marginal situations, win or lose you a game at the moment. Crystal Palace handled business, beat Brentford, who has been also, like, surprisingly good for me. I would say I didn't expect Brentford to be. I expected Brentford to be more in the relegation conversation than they've been so far. So fair play to them. But Keith Andrews is doing a decent job there, and he's leaning into his strengths as a former set piece coach who is now a head coach. He's doing a really good job so far, getting that team to play and punch above their weight. And we'll see what the rest of the season holds for them. But Palace, a loss to Palace is not the worst thing that can happen to them. Palace has been a good team and will continue to be a good team in this league. Brighton 3, Leeds United 0. I didn't watch this game, but I am not surprised Brighton went and won 3-0 at home against Leeds, because Brighton is a decent team. But yeah, I didn't watch this one, so I'm not going to talk too long about it. But guys, I'm going to end this one here. But thank you for supporting, watching. Please subscribe, like, do all the things that podcasters like to say.